Hello, everybody. Kathy Caprino, and welcome to Finding Brave, another episode. And I am so thrilled to talk with Kate Northrup today. Kate, thank you for joining. And so from
Having
Maine,
me.
from the beautiful
Yes.
Maine today.
Yes.
Yay. And, I've been following Kate for years, following her mother, Christian Northrup, for years as well. So what an honor. What an honor. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of things that I think are really going to resonate and align with the Finding Brave message. But we're focusing on doing less and living better, is how I would call it. And you have a
Love that.
book and a whole world of programs and tools
Mhm.
about that. But just a little preamble here. You all probably have heard me say or write about perfectionistic overfunctioning, which is the term I use for doing more than is healthy, appropriate, and necessary, and trying to get an A plus in all of it.
Mhm.
And, we were talking, Kate, before, pressing record, that when you do that, this is not just something you change, I think, overnight. It's a lifelong journey to change this, but how important it is to shift out of it. And it does take finding brave, because I think we do it out of fear. We do it out of judgment. We do it out of self-rejection. So we're going to learn all about how can we get on the path to doing less, but living in a more joyful, peaceful, calm, healthy, perfect way. Perfect. No, that's a hard word. We don't want to strive for perfection. The hell with that. I take that back. So here we go. Let me tell you a little bit about Kate. Kate's an entrepreneur, best-selling author, speaker, and mother, and has built a multimedia digital empire with her husband, Mike Watts. That's amazing. I would love to hear about how it is to work with your husband. That reaches hundreds of thousands globally. They are committed to supporting ambitious women to light up the world without burning themselves out in the process. Kate teaches data-driven and soul-driven, love that combination, time and energy management practices that result in saving time, making more money, and experiencing less stress. Kate has a membership of over 1,000 entrepreneurs, love it, called Origin Collective, that's about infusing more feminine energy into your business and reclaiming your time. And she's also helped over 5,000 students heal their relationship with money, which is so embedded in all of this too, isn't it, Kate? With her signature Money Love course. And her first book, Money, A Love Story, has been published in 5 languages. And her second book, now available, is Do Less, a revolutionary approach to time and energy management for busy moms. Oh my God, you got a lot going on, don't you, Kate? So let's dive in here. I'd love to know, and you share a little bit of on your website about this, but how did you start being passionate about doing less? I'm sure there's a personal story in here.
There is. So my personal story is that I was always somebody who prided myself on being really productive and capable and total type A overachiever. And I got pregnant with my first daughter, and I was so bone tired
Hmm.
that I just couldn't do things anymore. And it wasn't even like a mental choice.
Yeah.
It was just like, nope, nope. So the pregnancy forced me to slow down. I worked probably half the amount of hours that I had worked before while I was pregnant. And then when our daughter was born, I had a pretty traumatic birth experience, and she was sick. And so she was sick really for the first year of her life, and it was very difficult. She had really severe eczema, and
Wow.
she would wake up every 10 minutes scratching herself, bloody, screaming, and we were obviously exhausted. I had mastitis a million times. I had,
Grief.
infections, like, oh, la 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 la. It was just it
Wow.
sucked. The year
Rough.
totally sucked.
Oh, God.
And yet, a year after she was born, we were sitting with our accountant, and we realized that we had made the same amount of money during that year as we had made previous years, working twice the amount, because we'd only had 10 hours of childcare for Penelope that first year. And also, I just didn't have the bandwidth to care about our business. but we made the same amount.
How
So I
is
thought,
that? How did you?
exactly. Well, I thought, how is this? How did we do that? And so I basically thought, well, we're not that special. And probably if I did this by accident, I could do it on purpose. So do less, my book and what I'm practicing and teaching is really, I went back in time and looked at, well, what happened? How is that possible?
I'm
And
dying to
so
know.
I exactly. So I itemized and I looked at what shifted. And I will tell you, I mean, so many things that I wrote a book on it, but one was really sticks out and is the crux, which is that for the first time in my life, I was forced to let my body lead.
Yikes.
And yeah. And then amazingly, because our bodies are made of the very same stuff as nature, I got done the things that needed to happen because, as this wonderful Lao Tzu quote says, nature never rushes, yet everything gets done.
Beautiful. Can I dimensionalize that and ask
Yes.
you what I hear and make sure I get it? Because again, I'm a recovering perfectionistic overfunctioner. So my tendency is to do the work of three people. That's my tendency. And we all talk about, how we say, oh, we're so busy. I often say that and I'm like, why are you saying that? As if it's a badge of honor. Stop it. But let me ask if this is what happened. When you let your body lead, I'm guessing that the peak times that you're able to produce and generate and concentrate, when you allow yourself to do it, then you are going to do three times what maybe you would have when you're beleaguered, exhausted, depressed, right? So, number one, you're doing it when your body says you can do it. I think, and tell me if I'm not getting it. Number two, I think your decisions are better.
Yes.
Right? Instead of like,
Hardcore.
is this you? I tend to, any staff I've ever had is like, good Lord, slow down. You're like a hummingbird. We can't keep up because I'm desperate to do, let me try this. Let me try that. Let me try this webinar. So they're not good decisions. They're based on something else. So you're making better decisions when you're slowing down.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that right?
Because it is right. We have a tendency to live outside ourselves. And when we are outside ourselves, we don't make the best decisions for ourselves because we are operating in essentially a separate universe
Yeah.
when we are all completely other focused versus self focused. And so
Wow.
I created a system that I call self sourced scheduling that
Wow.
is organizing our lives based on how we feel internally. So we're creating our external lives based on an internal feeling, as opposed to creating our external lives based on the external factors of everyone and everything around us, which,
Wow.
of course, makes us lose ourselves if we ever had ourselves to begin with. I mean, I have a 4-year-old daughter and she has not lost herself yet. And so help me God, I will do whatever I can to support how full of herself she is. I want her to be that full of herself forever, as much as possible, with, obviously
Yeah.
developmentally
Right.
appropriate
Right.
layers
And
of
we don't
being
want a
aware of other people.
narcissist.
I do not want
Okay,
to raise a
girl,
narcissist.
back off a little. Can I get, so obviously we're talking about some form of spirituality, some form of, so I'd love your thoughts on this, but I think the whole thing has to start with having a very deep, intimate relationship with yourself.
Yes,
Would
which
you
most of
agree
us
with
have
me?
never been taught how to do.
Most people listening are going to go, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And when Kathy says to listen to yourself and develop a relationship, what are you talking about? And how do you do that? I mean, isn't that the foundation?
It is. And for me, I was never a meditator. I was like, "Ugh, people who meditate or tell me to meditate are so annoying, and I'm too busy. Like, I have too much going on, and I don't want to because I really like to stay in motion."
Oh
And
man, you and
so,
I are so similar.
oh,
Like it's a
yeah,
different feeling to
it's a
meditate,
different
and
feeling.
sometimes it's annoying. I'm going to
It's
be honest.
I still find people who talk about meditation annoying, even though I've become one of those people. And by the way, I'm still not a daily meditator. Maybe someday. Okay. But here's what I found was so profound for me. And this is not going to be what people expect. For me to create this intimate relationship with myself and tune in with myself, what happened is I got my period back after my first daughter. And it was like the first time I acknowledged really that my period could be anything more than a nuisance, because I hadn't had it for so long with the pregnancy. And then I didn't get it for 13 months after she was born. And before I got pregnant, I had lost my period for quite a while because I did this crazy intense fitness and nutrition program. So I, it was like borderline eating disorder. So I didn't have it for all this time. And then it came back, and it was like this feeling of I was my own again, because my body was no longer a receptacle for my daughter or her primary, her only nourishment source. So I was mine again. But really sort of
Mm,
for the first time, because now I was
mm,
my own as a mother, which is such an intense rite of passage. And I began to, I got obsessed. I got obsessed with tracking my period and taking notes on my experience of the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, and learning about them, and learning about the brain chemistry and hormones, and the whole, this from the spiritual aspect. I read everything I could. And I got into this intimate relationship with myself by
mm.
tracking my cyclical energy. And I felt like no one told me. Everyone talks about loving themselves, right? And it's like, I don't even know what that means. Well, how do you
Wow.
do that? And for me, tracking my cycle and noticing how I felt was one of the most profoundly loving things I could do, because instead of trying to be different, I was noticing how I am.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me,
Okay.
that's how I did it.
Can I share with people? So I'm beyond the period stage now. But I want to highlight a few things if I can. So Kate and I are all about, I think, let's just tell the brutally honest truth here, because we don't hear that very much. I have 2 kids, they're 22 and 25. And oh my God, we plan for our children. We adore them. What a gift. And I will say, preparing to get pregnant, being pregnant, and then nursing, I felt like, when am I going to be able to drink what I want, have caffeine? It was, I'm going to be honest, an awesome responsibility that this body was growing another body. And some people love it and live every minute. I felt stressed. I like, if I'd
I
have a
hate
little
being
sip of
pregnant.
coffee. My mother, who's 95, was like, it was the happiest time of my life. And I felt great. I'm like, what in the hell
I
are you talking
know.
about?
Some women
I
say
did
that.
not
It's
feel great. I
wonderful.
almost had
Mm-mm.
preeclampsia. So I want to normalize that for everyone. You are what you are. And let's not look at, I should be, should be, should be, should be, and I'm less than, right? But what's interesting is, now that I don't have a menstrual cycle, I have to tune into my body in a different way. But I think our point is, whether you have one, whether you don't have one, whether you never had one, what we're asking is, know yourself in a deeper way. And that's physical, emotional, spiritual, behavioral. And it can be from, I learned as a therapist, our body says what our lips cannot.
I love that
Isn't that
phrase.
so good?
Do you know is that?
I don't
Do you,
know whose that is.
oh,
I
that's
just,
good. I'm
the
gonna write it
professor said
down.
it. I know. But so I had chronic illness, 4 years of an infection of the trachea. And
Oh,
every 3 months I'd lose my voice, and it would be burning pain. Well, I do believe in energy healing and have studied it. What is that? That's a pain deep in the seat of your personal expression. Now, I know, folks, some of you are going to go, what? This is just too off the charts. But I believe that the body says what the lips cannot. So if that's the first way you learn about yourself, just listen.
well, yeah, and our bodies are here. They're the only thing that is with us the whole time.
And
Our kids will not be, our spouse will not be, our friends will not be, our parents will not be. But for me, my relationship with my body, it's like, oh, well, here I am. Yes, we're spirits and souls living in a physical experience, but we are having a very physical experience, and it dictates a lot of our lives. So why not get into loving relationship with it by getting to know it, as opposed to trying to change it all the time? Our culture is so obsessed with trying to change our bodies, and we can change our bodies in a loving way. Absolutely. We can take care of them. But I think the listening and the just asking, like, how do I even feel today? What is
exactly.
going on?
What is going on? What hurts? I love it. Can I go back to, from the entrepreneurial perspective, Kate,
Yes.
the doing less? Um, can you talk about, for anyone who's starting a business or like me running a small business, can you give us some tips about how do we nip that
Yeah.
perfectionistic over functioning urge in entrepreneurial life?
Yes. So number one, there's a simply analytical part, which is the doing an 80-20 analysis on your time, your activities, your revenue, your business, your customers, everything. So what 20% of activities give you 80% of the results? What 20% of customers bring in 80% of the revenue? What 20% of offerings bring in 80% of the revenue? All of that stuff, because then it becomes really obvious what you can just get rid of. And I am a huge believer. I'm not much of a gardener, but but I really love petunias, and I've nailed it with petunias. And with the petunias, if you do not deadhead every day or every couple of days, they
Meaning nip
die.
off the dead
Nip
people?
off the dead buds. So we have to deadhead our lives and our businesses all the time. And I'm far more interested in what you get rid of than adding. So most of the time, we think as entrepreneurs, if we want to make more revenue and have a bigger impact, there's something we're not doing that we need to add in. 9 times out of 10, it's something that you're doing that you should stop doing.
I got a question for you. I'm going to ask
Yes.
you as a consultant. Would you
Great.
do it? it? And I have an answer for this, but I want to hear what you think. There are several things I do that don't generate much revenue, but I live for them.
Yeah. Well, that's
They
different.
feed me. And so,
Which does bring in revenue if you're feeling
does
fed
that,
indirectly.
okay, there you go.
I
Because
believe if it needs to bring you results or it needs to bring you joy.
beautiful.
Ideally
I
both.
see. I love
If
that,
not,
and I
that's
know
fine.
you're in iconoclast. Get the word out, because there's so much crappy ass entrepreneurial
Yeah.
advice, ugh,
Yes.
and there's so much crappy coaching advice. It's not all about, and some of it is a male worldview, frankly.
Mhm.
That you have to be your revenue has to be over 1 million, or you're not doing anything. Or, but I think there's a female worldview, and I don't mean to paint every woman with the same brush, but that if it feeds you in some way that's important, that's sustaining, that makes you feel alive, then it doesn't have to be making you, $500,000. Would you agree with that?
100,000,000%.
Do you
There are
hear what I
tons of
hear? The
things.
pressure, the
For
pressure.
sure. Yeah, I
If
mean,
it's
I
not
think
making money, let it go.
uh, yes, and if it's not making money but it lights you up, keep doing it. Who cares?
Oh,
We're
awesome.
not taking the money with us anyway. And no one is lying on their deathbed thinking, I wish I had made more money. But they are saying, and this is Bronnie Ware's work, the
Oh,
top
I
5
love
regrets
it.
of the dying. She says, like, one of the top 5 is, I wish I had given myself permission to be happier.
I want to tell you, I wrote, because that was such an inspiration, top 5 regrets of mid-career professionals.
Oh,
And it's not so different
I
from,
bet.
it's who I wish I spoke up to, who I wish I didn't keep in my life, what I wish I listened to instead of what I did. Same deal. Love it.
Mhm.
And so, more about you talked about earlier the I do want to hear about the hidden productivity superpower that you talk about in your book, but something about hyper productive trauma response. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is not my work. My work is adjacent to this, but I heard it the other day. And when you said you have a background as a therapist, I was like, well, I don't know. It just came up. So there's a woman named Erica Chitty Cohen who's a beautiful, doing beautiful work around birth and female health and all kinds of incredible things. And she brought up a concept of productivity or obsession with productivity as a post trauma response. So overachieving as post trauma response. And when I heard it, I just started to cry because I just knew it was right. Like, I just know that's so right on. And I've touched around the edges of this, certainly workaholism, right?
Right.
Or how we are wanting to stay in motion and stay busy because it's avoiding a feeling.
Right.
Oftentimes it's avoiding something under the surface. And if we stay in motion, if we stay busy, then we don't have to feel that thing, whether it's a conversation we need to have in our marriage, or the fact that we're doing work that's totally not in alignment with who we are, or, I mean, there's so many things. But when I heard this idea of overachieving as a post-trauma response, I just thought, I feel like that is such a cultural, like this insidious thing in our culture that we would, because working and staying busy is such a great way, it's such a great avoidance strategy.
Wow.
And it's not, I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but if you heard that and it resonates, then maybe looking at what are the fear patterns that keep us running all the
That's
time. Because
powerful.
it is powerful. We think like, oh, well, it's because I have to make money, but all of the data, and if you track your own time, you'll realize that the money-making activities they don't actually have to take you that much time. That's what I proved in that first year of motherhood for myself. I was like, whoa, what have I been doing then, working 50 hours a week all my adult life, if I could have worked 10 hours a week and made the same amount of money? And then I really have to look at, well, then why all the busyness? And that
Oh,
is a spiritual question and an
s-
emotional question, not a productivity question.
that's huge. Can I riff on two things there? Um, I have been so floored in the past 2, 3, 4 years since I understood what narcissism, literally narcissistic personality disorder is. And every time I talk about this, I think of Brene Brown, who I adore.
Mhm.
And if I were to have her on the show, I think she would probably say, based on what she writes, labeling people, it divides us and it's not a good thing. From my experience, when you've been on the receiving end of a narcissistic personality disorder, I don't mean, oh, he's a little self centered. I mean, personality disorder, you are so damaged and you don't know what hit you. What's been so shocking to me is I run a course, the Amazing Career Project. More than 60% of the women who come are all perfectionistic overfunctioners. That's who is drawn to my work. When I say, do you think you had a narcissist in childhood? They're like, I don't even know what that is, but I can't believe
Yes.
what you're saying. So I have seen that perfectionistic overfunctioning, doing too much, is tied to having a childhood where there's a narcissistic parent. And part of that trauma is there's conditional love. You are only going to be loved if you do this, sound like this, look like this, win that award. And so that's the trauma that I'm seeing
Mhm.
carrying over. So I'm actually going to I can't wait to check out Erica is her name.
Yeah, Erica
Yeah.
Chitty Cohen. We're going to have her on our podcast to
Wow.
talk more about it because I want to know more.
I want to know more. Now, I do want to say this too. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are not entrepreneurs. They work in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And I want to honor you all. And I can always hear what my listeners are thinking. Like I can hear when you said, just work less.
Yeah.
What they're going to say is, F off. I can't
Totally.
work less. What do you mean? But I have found in working with thousands of corporate women, you can work less. You can. Like I had one woman who says, gosh, I'm so stressed. I, do emails all through the night. I said, does your boss expect that of you? And then there's hemming and hawing. Well, no, not really. I said, it's your boundaries. And I know you and your mom talk about boundaries a lot. It's your boundaries. It's your belief that you have to do that. Now, not all the time, people, but so often it's you that's allowing that. It's you that's perpetrating that. And it's you that's sustaining that. Does that make sense, Kate?
100%. We really have to take radical responsibility for our lives. Now, I understand that if you work in a corporate environment, you cannot just suddenly work 20
Not
hours a
coming
week.
in till
I
noon.
totally get that. However, more and more is popping up around what's called a results only work environment, ROW. It's a philosophy. Turns out I've been running my company like this the whole time. I didn't know it was like a
Yeah, I didn't know
philosophy.
it had a name. I'm
It
looking
has a
that
name.
up.
And I love
Good
this
tip.
because now I have something to name the way we run our business. But it's worth looking into, because here's the truth. The data does not support the standard 40-hour work week, which, by the way, the average American works 47 hours a week.
47.
So, and at 49 hours a week for women, that is when statistically significantly our mental health starts to decline. So just 2 more hours a week than the average, our mental health starts to plummet.
Wow.
Okay. So this is major,
Wow.
major. There's no data that supports 40 hours is a good amount for
Yeah.
humans to work. It
Where'd
just
we
was
come up with
created
that?
during the Industrial
Oh.
Revolution based on how machines work. And we've just kept doing it because no one bothered to question it. Now, interestingly, companies that are moving towards like a 34 or 30-hour work week or even less are noticing that their productivity is increasing or at least remaining the same because there are fewer called out sick days.
Wow.
Their employees are happier because happier people are more productive. There's so much data supporting this. And so if you feel like you've checked in with yourself and you're like, no, my boundaries are solid, it's my boss that's the problem, you may consider presenting some of this data. And I wrote all about it. I think it's chapter 2 in Do Less. I can't remember which chapter it is,
Great.
but it's all outlined there.
And I'm guessing when we get to the point where, like, I've always been a late night person. That is who I am. I get up late, and if we could also make those 30 hours the time where we're most productive, it's
Yes.
4, right?
Yes.
Rather than it's got to be 9 a.m. to
who
blip.
cares like when the work is done?
Right.
I mean, we just brought on a new employee and she was like, so what are the hours? And we all work virtually. And I was like,
Whenever the hell you
whenever
want.
you feel like working. And she was like, well, what about timesheets? I was like, I don't want to see a timesheet. You have to.
Timesheet is a dirty word, right?
Just do your work. I don't care.
Oh my gosh,
You
I
know?
love it.
And
I love it.
my dream is that more and more companies move this direction because what it is it is seeing the people who work with us as whole, capable humans who don't need to be babysat.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
yeah.
What a novel idea, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. All right, now I'm aware of our time, but can I ask you this? You clearly, life happens to you and then you look at what's happened. You're one of those people,
I'm one of those.
that and I call it turn our mess into a message. I mean, we're passionate about, wow, I just went through a rough phase here and let me see what I can learn and teach, because then it's not for naught. I think that's probably how you operate, right?
It is. I actually had a dream. This is so crazy. I had a dream many years ago where there was a book on my bookshelf next to my bed in the dream. And I pulled the book off. The spine of the book said Unforgettable was the title of the book. And I opened up the book and the page that I opened to said, if you are to live in the light, you must earn your living with the sharing of insight.
Wow.
And I'll never forget this dream. And so from that moment forward, I was like, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be
Say
doing.
it again. Say it again.
If you are to live in the light, you must earn your living through the sharing of insight.
What a beautiful, poetic, powerful message.
Yeah. So that
there you go.
is what
That's what you're
I do.
doing.
I just kind of share what I think.
Oh my God, what a great way to make a living. So can you, along those lines, it doesn't have to be around do less, but can you tell us for your life what the biggest 3 lessons have been? For men, for women, for whatever. I know I didn't prepare you.
No, this is great. I love it. Number one lesson has been my worth is not based on what I do. My worth
Can you
is not
tell us
based on
more?
how much I have gotten done.
Oh.
So that's number one.
Can I ask about that?
Mhm.
My worth is not based on what I do. Does that mean on the volume that I produce, or even how good I am as a mom, or
Yep.
what is your worth based on, do
I
you
think
feel?
it's inherent for all of us. I mean, I think it's also who we are.
Yeah.
It's like what presence do we bring? Who is our essence? And of course that impacts how good of a mother I am, and how good of a wife I am and all of those things. But like, as opposed to sort of the tallying of like, what did I do today? Or what did I do this year? How good am I? That has
So
been a big life
beautiful.
lesson.
Beautiful.
Another one has been, that the truth is healing.
Tell us more about that.
So I, as many of us did, grew up in a household where it's a very waspy household where we just everything looked fine and everything was supposed to be fine.
Yeah.
And really, it was not an environment where we just said what we felt in the moment. And I had to learn the skill of having uncomfortable conversations because I used to think that the truth hurt people. But what I've come to realize is
Wow.
that when said with love, the truth heals people.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that's a big one for
Oh,
me.
that's huge.
And then um I think the third one is one I'm learning now, or it's really something about bliss and pleasure and the permission to feel good and how that can fuel our lives, like how important it is to prioritize bliss and pleasure, that really, like, that is what we're here for, I believe.
Love it.
Um and so I'm more like in that one. I don't have like a good summary.
I love it. I add to that I believe that women are programmed not to prioritize bliss. It's not just that we don't know how, we are programmed. One, don't put yourself first. Two, it's funny. I grew up, my dad, we called him a funster. He died 6 years ago, but he was the most fun loving. But my mom, who 95, I love her, she would say, yeah, your father, it's all about the fun. It was like a negative thing.
Yeah.
Like there's something wrong with being all about the fun. And so I would suggest folks that you look at the programming you got around fun and bliss,
Totally.
and you're going to peel layers of what you were told. Oh, that's a powerful one. But really, what are we doing on this planet here? Is it just to struggle and stress and be beleaguered, or
Yeah.
is it to live full out with a lot of bliss, right? That's a powerful one. Thank you for sharing those.
You're welcome.
Hey, where do we learn all about, where do we get your book? You have something important coming out. Where do we get it all?
Yeah. So katenorthrup.com is the best place. And I do have my book Do Less, which you can get anywhere. And I have a brand new Do Less planner because so many people asked me, hey, with these concepts that you share, do you have a planner? Could you make one? And I was like, yes,
And
I
that
could.
means every day, it guides through
Yeah, so
steps
it's a
and
whole system. Yep. So that's available at my website as well.
how
And
beautiful. I
yeah.
want to ask one other thing because I have one more minute. Can you tell us the biggest lesson about mothering that you've faced?
Yeah. That Okay, how do I sum it up? It's really about what's the lesson? It's about letting go and letting things that, like, the most important thing I need to do is let things be how they are as opposed to how I want them to be.
Wow. Will you say a little more
So,
about that?
yeah, I mean, I just thought, cuz I always wanted to be a mom, that it would feel natural and like it would feel good. And mothering does feel good sometimes, and sometimes it really sucks. And um so but it's harder, as everything, when I am trying to make it be different than it is. But when I can just be like, well, right now I'm sitting on the floor and my husband doesn't come home for 2 hours and I am so bored and I do not know what to do with these children and they're asking me for things constantly. They won't stop. Rather than try to make that be different, if I just really sit and be with them, it does get more fun and it does get easier. And at least I'm not wasting energy trying to speed the time up.
So does that mean as you're sitting there going, good Lord, I'm so bored, you say, all right, I'm bored.
Yeah. All
That's
right. I'm
okay.
bored. And then just
Let's
notice
see if I can
something.
get less bored.
Yeah. Or just like, oh, just even admitting like I'm bored and just sitting there and then seeing if, like, well, can I dive a little deeper into something that one of them is doing? could I put on
Love
music
it.
because, I love music and I know I love to dance. And then when I'm feeling more joyful, they'll feel more joyful. Like, but
And I love it.
what I'll use, what I am learning not to do is like try to get into a flurry of activity to push through the moment, right? So like to not get on my phone, to not try to clean the whole kitchen, to not have a spotless living room, to just like be there on the floor, being bored.
I love it. I just want to just applaud and hug you for this. There is so much about what a good mother is and what you should feel. And I got tears in my eyes when you said that, because at a earlier point in our lives, we had a nanny and I had a corporate job. And I remember the nanny could sit on the floor with my daughter for hours,
Yeah.
alphabet and reading, and I couldn't. And
Nope.
I looked at her and went, I'm a crappy mother. Look at this. And she would make her homemade food, and I'm like, I'm crappy. And then I remember another nanny's sister, I had met her, and she said, pardon me, I'm losing my voice talking about it. Because I worked out of the home a lot of hours, the sister said, do you like being a mother? And I was like, I got so defensive. But what I sensed she meant was, how can you be the kind of mother you are and not be home with your child from 7 to 6? And what I want to say to you people is, I'm 59 and I remember that comment.
What an awful
So
thing to say to somebody.
what I want to say to you is, don't let the world shame you for the kind of person you are, because it's devastating. I think nothing has shamed me more than comments about my parenting.
So true.
Would you agree with that?
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
So true.
when someone judges me as a parent, it's hits so hard. So I hope people, what you're getting, I get choked up, Kate. What I think we're saying is, just find a way to love yourself, not try to make yourself different, not try to judge. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not loving enough. It's just a waste. Just love yourself. Would you say that's a theme for today?
I would.
Thanks so much for joining, Kate. Thank you so much. Folks, I hope you got something out of this. We'd love to hear from you wherever you see this podcast, wherever you can comment. How are you take Kate's planner? How is it helping? How is, the meditation? How about we don't have to sit on a mountain? I can't cross my legs, because I broke a leg and it won't cross. We don't have to cross our legs to meditate. Just be with yourself. Just listen to yourself for 2 minutes. Just ask yourself, how am I feeling? Oh, why is my neck hurting? What is my neck saying? Just find a way today and every day to love yourself a little more. And I think you will end up doing less, but living better, as Kate teaches. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kate, again. Come back soon. Have a wonderful, brave, self-loving week, everybody. And see you next time. Bye.